Good morning. Good morning, everybody out there in internet land. Welcome to Hot Mess Life Coach, Season 2, Episode 6. I'm your host, Brian Hogan, both a hot mess and a life coach, because yes, that is too allowed. And this is the show for people trying to get it together while the world seems to be falling apart. And I like to remind you that it just seems to be falling apart because what we're actually living through is the transformation of human consciousness, which can be as ugly and messy and painful as giving birth. And yet here we are in the throes of our labor pains, and we're doing just fine. Today, what I want to talk to you about is how life sends you messages and how you can respond to them. Because life is sending us messages all the time. Yes, it's true. Whether we believe it or not, whether we know it or not, whether we like it or not, life is alive, conscious, benevolent, and trying to communicate with us. I know this because it communicates with me. It communicates with me in my body, in my imagination, in my emotions, and even in my circumstances. I'm going to tell you a couple stories in a minute that will bring that home to you. Everything contains a message. We just have to learn to read the tea leaves of our lives. That starts by examining our primal world beliefs, and it ends by tuning into our mind and body connection. So if we don't have the right set, or the right is the wrong word, if we don't have an empowering set of primal world beliefs, it's going to affect everything else about our lives. And if we don't have the ability to tune into our mind-body connection, we're going to miss the messages that life is sending to us, which are its way of trying to guide us along the path to our right destiny, to our best destiny, to the highest possible outcome for us. We're not living on this lonely, desolate, mechanistic planet. But if that's the world belief that you hold, if that's your primal world belief, it will seem that way to you, because life is so unconditionally loving and supportive that it will not push back against what you insist is true. It's just like a good neighbor or a good friend who's like, okay, agree to disagree. I'm not here to argue. I just want to be here for you. That's the same with the planet's consciousness. And so we need to examine our primal world beliefs and learn, if we can, to adopt a primal world belief that is more empowering, flexible, and adaptive. Because the time that we're living through now, this post-COVID, post-pandemic, crazy era of life, is a time when flexibility and adaptability are going to be way more rewarded than any kind of intractability. That's what we talked about last week with learning to surf rather than being drowned out by the tsunami. I think it was a couple weeks back. So there's actually some research on primal world beliefs done by a couple researchers, Clifton, and another one. Sorry, other one who I forget your name. But if I remember, I'll put it in the show notes below. But this research is really fascinating. So I honestly believe that the human race is in dire need of an overhaul. We need to start finding creative solutions to intractable problems. And that has never been more urgently needed than it is today in this society that we live in now, that is limited by grief, loss, trauma, as well as garbage, chemicals, and violence. Innovation and imagination are needed now more than ever before to heal this planet and the people who live on top of her. While the entire species has been affected by the losses and restrictions associated with COVID-19 and the corresponding government responses, people living below the poverty line have been disproportionately affected, similar to how environmental racism and classism operates. In order to turn the Titanic of our thinking and actions around, as it relates not just to COVID-19, but to our fundamental way of viewing the world, our primal world beliefs, humanity needs the resilience that comes from empowering spiritual belief systems, even if those belief systems come entirely from the reaches of our collective imagination. In a sense, it doesn't actually matter if God is real, because by believing in a positive world or a higher power, humanity benefits, which paradoxically could be an argument for God's ultimate reality as the field that connects all things. The power of imagination has been linked in the research to healing, and it has been linked in historical records to healing for centuries. So by coupling positive expectation with an empowering primal world belief, life coaches, healers, those of us out there who want to work to make the world a better place can tap into the innate resilience within each person, as well as within the environment that supports us. Clifton argued that while the idea, and this is the researcher about primal world beliefs, he argued that while the idea of people's view of themselves and their future was a large determining factor in shaping behavior. An example of this kind of belief, people's view of themselves and their future is like, I am worthless, nothing will change. So this type of belief was a large determining factor in shaping behavior. An even more prominent yet understudied factor could be their environmental beliefs, specifically their primal world beliefs. A primal world belief in this context means an overarching belief about the world's character. So using this 99 question survey, Clifton and the other researchers discovered many primal world beliefs, which we're just going to start calling primals now. And they were able to distill them down into two major categories. Basically, there were those who viewed the world as good, with the strongest characteristics in that worldview being that the world was safe, enticing, and alive. And then there were those who viewed the world as bad, with the strongest characteristics being that it was dangerous, dull or inert, and mechanistic. Primals are a way of understanding a person's reactions to things because it's based on their assumptions. You can read that like it's based on their imagination about the external situations, rather than being based on the external situations themselves. People's reactions are based on their primal world beliefs. This is even true that our assumptions about our external situations are based more on our primal world beliefs than they are even on our big 5 personality traits. So even the personality traits that are inherent in us and inborn in us have less of a determining factor on how we're going to react to our lives in the world than do our primal world beliefs. So primal world beliefs are central. They are imperative to understand, to examine, and if you have the primal world belief that the world is bad, you're going to want to do whatever you can to start wiggling around and uprooting that belief. Because these primals are highly predictive of resilience, meaning with the primal world belief that the world is good, you're going to bounce back a lot quicker than with the primal world belief that the world is bad. Thus, reinforcing your primal world belief. If you have more resilience, the world's going to seem more good. If you have less resilience, the world's going to seem worse. So the primal world beliefs are a self-reinforcing loop, which is why you really want to jump on the track of believing the world is inherently good, that the world is safe, enticing, and alive. And I'm going to tell you some stories in a minute to share how that's true in my own life. So when you shift from the generally bad primal to the generally good primal, the world you inhabit will also shift, allowing you to move from a dangerous and unforgiving world into a world permeated by beauty, treasure, and fascination. Our life, being filled with joy or suffering, may depend in large part on the type of world we think we live in, rather than the type of world we do live in, based on our primal world beliefs. So I'm going to share with you a couple stories about how life communicates with me, because life can communicate with us through many mediums. It can communicate with us through our body, through our circumstances or things that happen to us or happen around us, through our emotions, which is the most obvious one, and it can even communicate to us through our dreams. For sure, for real, it can. And so I'm just going to share a couple stories with you now. So this example is an example of how life communicated a message to me through my body. So what's this year, 2023? So maybe 8 years ago, maybe 10 years ago now, I was still working in the medical marijuana industry out in California. I was running a compassionate care mobile delivery service with a business partner. And we were on a delivery to a not so great part of town. Excuse me. And when I tried to drop off the package, it ended up being a setup and we were robbed and I was held up at gunpoint. Excuse me. And I was in this situation and we had a protocol where we would have I had my cell phone open and I had an open line to my partner who was in the car. So that if anything bad or dangerous happened, he would know about it. And so I'm holding I've got my cell phone in one hand, and it's just an open line to my buddy in the car. And I start to get robbed. There's one guy holding a knife on me, another guy holding a gun. And I was like, I'm being robbed. You're robbing me. And I'm just trying to speak it really loud so that my buddy through the phone can hear it, which is, in hindsight, was ridiculous. That was very, very dangerous. But I actually found out later that my cell phone had died and my buddy had no idea what was going on. So I was using my theater voice and projecting into the phone for no good reason at all. But anyway, so I'm standing there and I give the guy the bag of cannabis, medical cannabis, and he puts the gun right in my face and he says, "Get on the ground now." And I just had this flash of insight in my body. It wasn't a thought. It wasn't an emotion. It was in my body. It was like a twisting, a constriction in my gut. And what it told me was, if you comply with this order to get down on the ground, he is going to shoot you in the head. I was just sure of it. I was 100% certain about it. And I had no reason to be certain. I had no psychic way to be certain. I just knew. I just knew it in my gut. My gut clinched, and that was the message that came up, was do not comply. I was like, wow, how do I not comply? That's when my mind started rushing in with all of, but the who's and what's and buts and hows and coulds, because I was like, he's got a gun in my face. I can't just not comply. Shut the hell up, gut. What are you talking about? How am I going to not comply? That's ridiculous. But it was all instinct and it happened so fast. So I knew I could not comply or I would be dead. And so I instinctively pulled out the best weapon that I had, a weapon that I am an expert with. And that weapon was sarcasm. So he said, "Get down on the ground." And all in the flash of a few seconds, I looked at him and I rolled my eyes and I said, "Really?" And I just rolled my eyes and that was obviously in hindsight also really dangerous, but it was the result of a message communicated to my body from the benevolent world in which I live. And I can still say the world was benevolent even while having a gun in my face, because the messages from the world saved my life. Because when I said "really" and rolled my eyes at him, he stumbled back. He literally stumbled back a little, was totally thrown off by this person being brazenly sarcastic with a gun in his face. And he said, "Oh, okay, just run away then." And so I was like, okay, that's my cue. Bam! And I ran out of there. He never shot me. I obviously didn't die that day. So here I am because of sarcasm. Sarcasm and a message from the universe communicated through my body saved my life. So that's one example. Another example is my emotions. And this one is, I was applying to grad schools. This is back in 2016 now. And, I knew that it was the right move based on this rush of emotions that came over me, because I was trying to figure out what was the next chapter of my life. I had a cushy job. I was working in the medical cannabis industry. I was working with a family of business partners and friends who I love and I'm still in touch with to this day, and I love them to no end. And I was making plenty of money, and we were helping heal sick patients, like cancer patients and children with epilepsy and their parents, and all kinds of stuff that was really beautiful and fulfilling, and who would walk away from this? Who? But I could tell that it wasn't right for me. There was just something in me that said, this isn't fulfilling you the way you want it to. So that was already life communicating to me through my emotions, the emotions of discomfort, the emotions of low satisfaction, saying explore, find something else. So I started looking online. I found this grad program for film and television production, which is what my dream has always been, something in film and TV. And as soon as I found it, it ended up being in my hometown. It was one town away from my hometown, this grad school. And when I hit on the idea of applying to it, I was hit with a rush of excitement. It was this wave of emotions: peace, freedom, joy. The emotions that I felt was a message from the universe saying, yes, go in this direction. Even though I had a beautiful setup in California where I was making a lot of money at a cushy job with people I loved doing meaningful work. None of that mattered. My emotions said, no, not that, because my emotions about that felt meh. And they said, yes, this, because my emotions about this felt like, wah! So I went in that direction. Now, I'm in Connecticut. I'm a struggling college professor living in my sister's basement, writing screenplays and studying clinical mental health counseling, and I could not be happier. I feel freer. I feel like I am on the track of my destiny. Even though from the outside perspective, from the paradigm of culture of success chasing Western world that we live in, I took a huge step backwards. Like, I had my own business. I was making piles of money. I was healing people. Now I'm trying to make ends meet. I'm still in school. I'm between jobs. I live in a basement. But so what? I have an experience of joy that's way deeper and stronger and higher and bigger than the joy I felt any of those days in California. And I'm also in Connecticut now, where it's winter and cold and gloomy. And still, I can tell you in no uncertain terms, I am happier. And the reason I am happier is because I heard a message from the universe communicated to me through my emotions, and I followed it. And that was 2 years after hearing a message from the universe communicated to me through my body, which kept me alive in the form of sarcasm. And the third story I want to share with you is a story about how life can communicate to us through circumstances. So you've heard from me how it communicated to me through my body, which it still does all the time, how it communicates to us through our emotions. And now I want to give you an example of how it communicates through circumstances too. So I was in high school and I was a born again Christian at the time, and now since then I've died again because I no longer believe there's just that one way to heaven. That feels totally backwards to me, and God is way bigger than any one religion. But at the time I was caught in the thrall of like the one way, this is the one way. And I was a gay man who wasn't allowed to be an openly gay man in that environment in young life, in college, in high school. So one night I was beside myself. It was after a youth group meeting, and I was feeling really caught in this conflict between like my true identity as like a queer person and my social mask, my social facade as a person who loves Jesus and is pretending to be straight. And I did love Jesus, and I still think Jesus's message of compassion is a beautiful message. But so that part wasn't me pretending, but the part about being straight was me pretending. And so I was driving from youth group back home, and I was driving down this hill in the town I lived in, which was a pretty affluent town. I'm telling you that because everyone had nice cars, and nothing on the cars was ever broken. So the story I'm about to tell you is quite unusual. So I'm driving home, excuse me, and I'm wailing and sobbing and bawling in the car, and I'm like, how can this be like this? Like, why do I have to pretend? Like, God, you're so much bigger. Like, you don't, I know in my heart you don't care what I do with my penis. Like, I just know you don't care. But everyone's telling me you do care, and so I'm feeling really stuck. And I was having this crisis of faith, and I was like, all right, that's it. If you don't show me a sign that you're real and you're bigger than this one religion that I've been taught to believe, then I'm done with you. I am done. And I don't advise necessarily making threats to the divine like this and throwing down gauntlets of ultimatums, because I don't think that will always work. But in my case, like, the compassion of the universe just knew I needed what I needed. And so the 16-year-old temperamental, stubborn me threw down this gauntlet and said, you will never hear from me again if you don't give me a sign that you're real. And the sign that I want is a bediddle, which means one headlight is broken on the next oncoming car. And I said it has to be the very next car. And there had been no cars for a while. And then right after I said it, literally right after I said it, a car sort of seemingly out of nowhere came like rushing up, like driving up towards me with one headlight out. And I was like, whoa. Like, I literally started shaking. I had to pull over on the side of the road, and like I was bawling now, and now I was bawling like happier tears, like, oh my God, God is real, and he's not just this narrow-minded homophobe. Like, he's real. He's so much bigger than that. And I was shaking. I had to stop driving because I was shaking so much. That was an example of life communicating to me through my circumstances. And what it taught me once and for all was that the spiritual side of life is real, and it taught me that it's bigger than one single religion. Another example of life communicating to me through my circumstances was when I got into college, because I was living on a hospital ship, a non-governmental hospital ship, traveling the world, helping the poor and needy in developing nations. This was with my born again Christian organization. So I remained part of that organization for years, even after the Bediddle incident. But I brought my own open mind to it. So I knew now I wasn't living under the tyranny of a homophobic God, but I also knew I loved the message of Jesus, and I wanted to keep working in that way. So I'm on the ship, I'm in Africa, and my mom won't get off my case about applying to college. You have to apply to college. You have to apply to college. I'm like, I don't want to. I like what I'm doing here. Forget college. Like, get out of my face. Like, I'm not doing that, but she wouldn't let up about it. So finally I gave in and I was like, okay, fine. I will apply to college. And I applied to 10 schools partway through. Even that, I was pretty intractable, but I was like, well, they have to have two things about them. One, they have to pay my full way to go, whether that's financial aid or scholarships. I'm not going to pay a penny. And two, they have to have no core curriculum because I'm not going to take any classes I don't want to take. So there. So I found 10 colleges that fit that bill that would either meet 100% of my unmet need, and they had no core curriculum. And I started the application process to all 10. Partway through the application process, I realized I was following my mother's dream for me, not my dream for myself. And I was like, all right, I got to stop. And I stopped. And I just dropped the application process midstream. Boom, just stopped. And so, as you would expect, some of the colleges I never heard from, because why would they? I didn't apply there. And like 6 of them rejected me because I had applied partially and not fully, and they got a piece of it. And one college out of the 10, for a reason I still can't figure out to this day, put me on their wait list. And that was Oberlin College, which is where I ended up going. And I actually called them up and I was like, are you sure? Because I didn't apply to come there. So I don't see how this could be possible. And they were like, yeah, we got enough of your application. You're on the wait list. All we need from you is the essay. Just write us an essay. And I'm a writer. I love writing. Writing is the easiest part of anything for me. So I was like, okay, fine. Like, I'll write the essay. So I wrote an essay about what I was doing on the ship and, my spiritual journey up to that point. And they took me. So I ended up getting into a college I didn't apply to with an essay that ended up being super easy to write. And I've learned in my life, when life gives you a circumstance that's weird and unusual like that, like something sort of synchronistic or serendipitous and out of the blue, that you follow it. And so I went to college after all, and that exposed me to 4 years living on this non-governmental hospital ship in the environment of homophobic Christianity, even though it was also a beautiful environment of love and compassion on one level, to then being over in this other environment, this extremely liberal, open environment, where even straight people want to go down on you. And like, I had these two extremes happening, but it was because I listened to a message from the circumstances of my life. So life was communicating to me in circumstances even then. A similar thing happened in West Hollywood when I was applying to restaurants. I applied to a bunch of restaurants, and I was submitting my resume around, and one of the places that I was going to submit to, but then decided not to send my stuff to, was a drag bar in West Hollywood called Hamburger Mary's. And a couple days later, they called me out of the blue and said, we want you to come do an interview. And I was like, I don't see how that's possible because I did not send you my resume. And this one too, I still don't know how they found me, how they got a hold of me, what happened. And I went in there, had the interview. The interview was terrible. I knocked over a silverware caddy. I made a total fool of myself, and somehow I got the job. And that job exposed me to the world of drag queens and this LGBTQ community that I had been avoiding because of my own self-loathing, because of the social programming I had in my youth group days. So it was another experience where circumstances of my life sent me a message that led me to a place that opened my mind even further, that opened my worldview even further. So that's just a couple examples from me to show you that life is conscious, it is alive, it is benevolent, and it is trying to communicate to you through your body, through your emotions, through your circumstances, and it even will do it through your dreams. The imagination is a powerful and underutilized faculty of the human being. Harnessing human attention, identifying our primal worldview, and learning how to have agency over what we choose to believe might just be the beginnings of the revolution of human consciousness the planet and all those who live on top of her so desperately need. Perhaps survival is less a matter of controlling everyone's choices than it is a matter of imagining a world in which harmony was the rule, war the exception, and thriving in almost mundane and ubiquitous way of life. Can you imagine that? If you can't, it can never happen. As Lewis Carroll famously said, imagination is the only weapon in the war against reality. So take up your arms and ready yourself for battle. As my favorite life coach and mentor, Martha Beck, would say, we ride at dawn. So really briefly, with the last few minutes, I just want to give you an exercise that you can do to tap into the messages from your environment, from your body, from your emotions, and from your dreams. This is an embodiment tool adapted from the work of Martha Beck. So the first step is to scan your environment for the symbol you want to examine, for the part of life whose message you want to understand more clearly. This could be a pain in your body, like, oh, my knee hurts all the time. This could be an emotion, like I'm always feeling low-level anxiety. This could be a craving that you're having in the moment. It could be a dream or a dream fragment, or it could be a circumstance, like in the stories I gave you, like something happening around you, like you witnessed a car accident, or you witnessed a person cut somebody else off in traffic, or somebody cut you off in traffic. So it can be something happening around you or to you. Once you've got the symbol in mind, step 2 is to embody it. So you get centered and calm first. Everything works better when you're centered and calm. So you can take a few deep breaths. You can go on a walk around your neighborhood, whatever it is to get you centered and calm. And then you go contemplative and you say, I am, and then you insert the symbol, the emotion, pain, body sensation, whatever it is, a dream fragment that you want to examine. And you list 3 adjectives. So I would say, like, I am Brian's craving for sugar, and I am. And then I would list 3 adjectives: sweet, annoying, terrifying. Whatever the 3 adjectives come to me at, for the symbol I want to examine. And then I would jot those down. And then I would do it again, and I would say, I am Brian's sugar craving, and my purpose is, and I would fill in whatever comes to my mind. You do it another time, I am Brian's sugar craving, and my message for Brian is, and then you write down whatever comes. The key here is to speak it out loud and to speak as the symbol. You don't say, Brian's sugar craving has a message, and this is the message. You say, I am Brian's sugar craving. You do it that way, specifically that way. So you're shifting from third person, looking at the symbol, evaluative, to first person, embodiment, embodying the symbol, embodying the dream fragment, the emotion, the craving, the pain, the circumstance, whatever it is. Not as yourself, but as the symbol. It will give you messages. They may not make sense in that moment for you, but once you are done with the exercise, you can look over your answers, and then a message or a theme starts to emerge, and it will become abundantly clear to you. So try it out. Try out this embodiment tool. Step 1, scan your environment, find a symbol. Step 2, get calm and embody it. Talk as the symbol. And then step 3, look over the message and see what theme emerges for you. That might be the exact solution to the question you're trying to ponder when you ask life to be clearer about the messages it's sending you. Life is trying to be clear all the time, but it doesn't speak in English, it speaks in symbols. So we can do this exercise to decode what the symbols mean into the language we understand, English, or whatever language it is for you. I don't want to assume. Okay. If you're listening to the show, you must have some facility with English. So anyway, there we go, because the show is in English. But anyway, I love you all. That's what I have for you today. So thank you so much for tuning in from the future, or if you're watching this on the live stream now, thank you. Or if you're listening to this on the podcast later, I really appreciate you all being here. And if you know anyone who might benefit from what you heard or saw today, please share this video, tag, TikTok, like, tweet, Instagram, post it, whatever it is you do out in social media land to get the word out about my helpful tips from your favorite hot mess and life coach. That's me, Brian Hogan. And if you want to learn more about me and what I do, you can always visit me at thebrianhogan.com for more information or to apply for coaching directly. In the meantime, I will see you all next week for episode 6 on Thursday, February 16th at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. In the meantime, be hot, be messy, and be blessed. Much love. Thank you.